Hello, my name is Floyd Red Crow Westerman. I'm of the Dakota Sioux Nation. It is my honor to present segments from the first installment of an important new docu-series called America's War on Indian Nations. What happened to the indigenous peoples of this country is much like the Jewish Holocaust. Only America's ethnic cleansing was at the hands of people who would later claim innocence in the name of God, freedom, and democracy. Historians have been reluctant to use the word Holocaust to describe the taking of the land and the shaping of America. Instead, they use rhetoric like the new frontier, or claim that the Indians were savage after all, or describe it as manifest destiny. Manifest destiny means that the taking of the land was not only justified, but ordained by God. Most schools in America still teach this feel-good version of history. America's War on Indian Nations tells another side of the story. This series will tell the truth about gross injustices and rampant human rights violations inflicted upon an entire culture. Early-day Europeans who came to America were commissioned to look for gold. With gold, the objective meant that nothing would stand in their way. State by state, various tools of genocide were employed in what became a systematic clearing of the land. The first of these tools was the bullet. The bullet was used to kill many millions of my people. Another tool of genocide was the smallpox-infected blanket. To Indians, the blanket was a dominant trade item. To give a blanket was a gesture of respect. Knowing this, early Americans distributed smallpox blankets in order to exterminate and eradicate the existing population. Those who survived this early form of biological warfare were removed by organized government-funded militias and more bullets. Imagine being in your home having dinner with your family when suddenly armed intruders break in and shoot your parents, take your children, burn your house, the children to be later used as servants and sex slaves. And if you survive that, to be rounded up like cattle and put on death marches to remote locations far from your homeland and put on reservations, a nicer term for what they really were, concentration camps. This horrific scenario is what happened to thousands and thousands, if not millions, of Indian people. For my ancestors, the Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota, this policy of concentration camp lifestyle was in effect from 1890 to 1930. For 40 years, my people were prohibited by law from leaving the reservations. The ethnic cleansing was effective. It is estimated that when Columbus arrived, there were approximately 20 million Indians in America. By the end of World War II, only 500,000 remained. This means that complete extermination was nearly accomplished. Listen to the words of some of the founding fathers of this country. George Washington, revered as the father of this country, wrote, and I quote, "Indians were wolves and beasts who deserved nothing from the whites but total ruin." Thomas Jefferson, acclaimed proponent of freedom and democracy, argued that the United States government was obliged, and I quote, "to pursue Indians to extermination or to drive them to new seats beyond our reach." Andrew Jackson, founder of the modern Democratic Party and the greatest Indian killer of all American presidents, urged United States troops, and I quote, to rout out from their dens and kill Indian women and their whelps. It is a great irony that American Indians, after being denied for many years their right to practice their own religion, speak their own languages, after being forced to live in the oppressive concentration camp lifestyles, after all that, Indians have gone on to become staunch defenders of this country in times of need. More Indians have received the Congressional Medal of Honor per capita than any other group of people. We remain a proud people in spite of the efforts to exterminate us. In order to heal, we first must accept our past. And now excerpts from Part 1, Exterminate Them, the California Story. In 1851, the first governor of California, Peter Burnett, wrote in a subsequent inaugural speech that a war of extermination will be waged between the two races until the Indian race becomes extinct. And in 1850, the first legislature of California enacted a law under the guise of protecting Indians titled An Act for the Government and Protection of Indians. In Section 20 of the law, it defined vagrant Indians and prescribed their punishment. It stated that any Indian able to work and support himself, who shall be found loitering and strolling about or frequenting public places, shall be liable to be arrested on the complaint of any resident citizen of the county. It was for, and I quote, champions of the Christian faith to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery. The following is a story of what happened in California.
Right after the conquest of the Valley of Mexico, a debate erupted whether Indians were human beings or not. Philosophers and scholars in Spain argued that they were natural-born slaves, not capable of understanding the complexities of Catholicism and Christianity.
See, Spain based their ownership and the right to do this on something called a papal bull of 1493, the year after Columbus discovered the New World for Europe. The Pope said, okay, Spain gets to have North America and part of South America, and Portugal gets the rest. So, by the swipe of a pen, we have a Pope giving away our property.
When they entered here, I think it was the beginning of the end of the Cahuilla people here as far as our culture went, because everything was destroyed by them. When they brought cattle in here, thousands of cattle and horses and things, and they destroyed the very food that was for the Indian people. This is never written anywhere. There's never told how they suffered in their own land.
But probably the most devastating was the introduced diseases. And we're talking about children's diseases like measles, mumps, chickenpox, not even to mention the horrendous ones like smallpox and diphtheria, venereal diseases. And people became afraid. Their children were sick and dying. In all epidemic diseases, it is the children and the elders who die first. Sadly, kind of a situation where your past and your future are dying right before your eyes.
In the spring of 1769, Father Junipero Serra, accompanied by the Spanish military, sailed into San Diego Harbor and established California's first mission. Over the next 50 years, the Spaniards built 20 other missions along the coast to colonize the land and pacify the Indians. When Father Serra arrived, there were approximately 340,000 Indians in California. By the turn of the century, only 17,000 remained.
And then when they started the missions here, well, that was worse yet, because there were all Indian slaves that built those missions. And I remember my father was telling me one time, he said, you know, his great-great-uncle and his uncle before that, his great-great-uncle was telling them that he was one that was kidnapped and taken into one of the missions.